Hey guys, this week I'm going to show you how to make sourdough bagels. So I'm doing a voiceover for this part because it was super late when I was making the dough and I was trying to not wake my kids up. So I start off by putting a stainless steel KitchenAid bowl on my kitchen scale and I measure out 250 grams of water. Then I add 150 grams of sourdough starter. And then we're adding 9 grams of salt. And I'm adding about 20 to 24 grams of, this is cane sugar. You could also do honey or syrup if you want a more like natural alternative. I haven't used maple syrup before, but I have used honey and I liked how it turned out. And then I used 500 grams of bread flour. I used the organic, unrefined King Arthur flour, just so I don't have the glyphosate content in it. But honestly, it's personal preference of what kind of flour you want to use. That's just what I use at home. Now we're taking the bowl over to the KitchenAid and we are going to mix it up. We're going to need this dough. So like I said, you don't have to have a KitchenAid mixer, but it does make this part significantly easier. Otherwise, you're doing it by a little bit of elbow grease. So you want to do it for about 5 to 7 minutes. If your dough is kind of sticky like mine is here, what you can do is add a few pinches of flour so that way it makes it easier for you to work with. Because if you've ever tried to roll out sticky dough, it's nearly impossible to get off your fingers and it's very difficult to work with. So add a little bit more flour. If you find that your dough is dry, add a few pinches of water to add a little bit more moisture. So once you've kneaded it for about 5 to 7 minutes, you can take it off your dough hook if you're using a KitchenAid mixer. And then I kind of round it out into a ball in my bowl and I will let it sit on my counter overnight and place a damp towel over it to keep it moist so it doesn't dry out. You can also put this in a Ziploc bag and keep it in the fridge for a few days if you don't want to bake right away. Alright, it has been a few days since I started the bagel dough. I've had it in the fridge for the last few days. I haven't had a chance to make it, but I am making it for breakfast this morning for the gremlins. So I thought I would show you how I make my own bagel dough. All right, so I got it out of the fridge. Some people let it come to room temperature prior to boiling it and baking it. You don't have to do that. Just take it right out of the fridge. I personally think it's easier to separate the pieces when it's still a little cold. With this amount of dough, I get about 8 bagels, and I'll show you how I separate it. Some people measure out the weight. I just eyeball it by size. So I rolled it into a ball, and then I'm gonna cut it in half. If your dough is slightly sticky when you're trying to cut it and it's not as easy to work with, take a little bit of flour and just sprinkle it on there, and it will help not stick to your fingers. So I'm gonna take 1/2, set it to the side of my cutting board. I'm gonna roll the other half into another ball. Then I'm gonna cut this ball in half. Same concept again, set a half aside, roll the other half, cut this in half, and then you have 2 pieces. So now I have 2, and then I'll do the same thing with this. And then you have 4 bagels, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. You could measure it out if you want to be exact. You don't have to. I feel like this is the easiest way to do it. It's quick. Normally when I'm doing this, the boys are panting for bagels. So I like to do it as quick as I can. All right, now I have my 8 bagels. I'm going to roll them into balls. And you're going to take your 2 fingers on either side and push into the middle until you have a donut. You set aside and you repeat the step several more times. As a sidebar, when I'm rolling these out, I like to get my pot of water started boiling. So you just want a big pot. So I get a pot about that big. I know that's really helpful. Just something big enough to put your bagels in. I do 4 at a time. If you have a smaller pot, it's not a big deal. I've used a smaller pot. It just means you won't be able to boil as many bagels at the same time. I like using it bigger because it just saves on time. So while I'm rolling these out, I like to start my water boiling so that way it just saves some time. I also already preheated my oven to 425, so that's getting heated up too. I just find when you get things in motion as you're going, it just cuts down on the amount of time that you have to wait and you're doing things. And you know, when it's early in the morning, you gotta make it as easy on yourself as possible. So I got all my bagels rolled out, shaped. Now I'm gonna get my cooking sheet ready. I use this parchment paper on top of it, just so it doesn't stick to the pan. Got my cooking sheet. Now we're gonna place these on the cooking sheet.
Hi, Mama.
Hi, Tommy.
We're doing this. We're doing a bagel.
Yeah, I'm making your bagels.
Your bagels?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's broken on.
Do you see the bagels?
Yeah.
I gotta let them rise for a minute.
Okay.
Okay. So now that I have them on my cooking sheet, I'm still waiting for my water to boil. I'm gonna let these rise for like 10-15 minutes before we move on to boiling our bagels. Hey guys, over on my stove, my water is obviously boiling. So before I throw in these bagels, I'm going to put about 2 tablespoons of honey in the bagel. I'm going to put in 4 of my bagels and let them boil for about 30 seconds on each side. Bacon bagels.
It's hot. It's in there. It's hot.
It is hot. Tommy, do you want a plain bagel or do you want an everything bagel?
And bagels.
Yeah, I know the bagels. Do you want it with this seasoning on it?
No.
You just want a plain one? So if you want to add seasoning to your bagels, this would be when you do it. You pull, after you get them out of your pot, you can add cinnamon sugar to them, you can add cheese, you can add it to whatever your heart's desire. Now is when you want to, now is when you want to season them. So I don't do it any special way. Some people get a bowl, put the seasoning, and then dip it that way. I just spread it on here. So for this batch, I'm gonna do half and half. I'm gonna do half everything and then plain. My oldest doesn't like anything on it.
Bagel. I like bagels. Ooh, that's yummy. That's yummy, Mama.
It is yummy, Tommy.
Yeah. It's so good.
have your bagels boiled and seasoned. You're gonna put them in the oven for about 20 minutes. Then we're gonna take them out and we're gonna flip them for about another 5. It's hot. Best bagels. Best breakfast ever. It takes a little bit of time, but aren't all the good things worth the wait? I think so.